Welcome to day 2 of AVAR 2022. Thank you all for being here. I didn't introduce myself yesterday. I'm Lawrence Schwedler. I direct the music and sound design programs here at the DigiPen Institute of Technology. I'm also the co-chair, along with Remi Audfray of Meta, of the AVAR 2022 conference. And I guess I'll just take a moment to mention that the organizing committee for this conference consists of myself and Remi, as well as Agnieszka Rozinska, see if I get all the names right, Veronique Larcher, David Alon, Hannes Gamper, Ian Shores, Shawnee Jang, Dan Mortensen, our amazing AV guy, and August McCubbin, our volunteer coordinator back there. And this committee, it's 12 people. I might have missed one person, but and Randy Gagnon, my wife, who did all the graphic design. So the 12 of us have been working for really a year now to prepare for this conference, and we're just so pleased that you all could be here and share this with us. It's exciting. Yesterday, the events that I was able to attend, I just really enjoyed them, and I hope that you are too. I have a few quick announcements before we get on with our keynote address this morning. The first one is that I want to bring your attention to our amazing sponsors and their demos. In particular, at the end of this hall, down all the way at the end in the Van Gogh room, is a Reality Labs research at Meta is having a demo on glasses. I'm sorry, I don't have the name of the demo, but it's a really cool demo. So please go down there and take the time to go to that demo. It's amazing. Reality Labs Research also has their Quest demos right across the hall here in the room called Bernini. And right next to them is the room called Rembrandt, and there are our gold sponsors, which is Brandenburg Labs, Karl-Heinz Brandenburg's company, who is our keynote speaker tomorrow, has a fantastic demo, as does Head Acoustics, also right across the hall. And upstairs is a really cool demo by Audio Scenic. And if you haven't done it, you need to check it out. It's a soundbar with head tracking, crosstalk cancellation, a really cool demo. Our poster session last night was really wonderful. If you didn't get a chance to see it, go on up to the second floor. There's 20 posters. All of the papers that aren't doing oral presentations are up there, and you can look at them. So those are announcements about our sponsors. I have a couple other things. There was an error on the timetable on the monitor just outside the hallway here for today's, we're calling them post-keynote panel discussions. So today's panel discussion is not the one that was listed there. It is, and I don't have it right here. I didn't write it down, the name. Oh, yes, I did. Today's post-panel discussion is Immersion, Science and Application. And Agnieszka is going to be guiding that. So that's right after the keynote today. Also, there is shuttle service to Redmond local hotels starting at 6 p.m. this evening. So if you are staying at a hotel in Redmond and you want to catch the DigiPen shuttle, they'll take you. They're just making the round starting at 6 p.m. And starting at 6 p.m. tonight is our banquet and mixer right here at DigiPen in the Bites Cafe and Lounge. We're also going to have a beer and wine tent out in the back, and all of that is included with your conference registration. So I hope you can all join us for the banquet tonight. It'll be very casual, just good food and a bit of beer and wine and good company. So I hope you can all join us for that. Let me see if there were anything else. That was all I had, so I'm going to turn it over to co-chair Remi Audfray to introduce our keynote speakers, and enjoy the day.
All right, thank you, Lawrence. And today's keynote speaker is Veronique Larcher. Dr. Veronique Larcher is the director of AMBEO Immersive Audio, which is Sennheiser's brand for immersive audio products and experiences. She's also the founding advisor at EarKick, a startup focused on monitoring anxiety using audio biomarkers, among others. And Veronique has over 20 years of experience in the area of audio and venture building. Before launching AMBEO in 2016, she held multiple roles spearheading innovation at Sennheiser, most notably founding and managing their strategic innovation office in San Francisco. Veronique holds a PhD in 3D audio for virtual reality from IRCAM in Paris, and a bachelor's degree in economics and finances from the Paris Institute of Political Studies. Véronique?
1, 2, and 2. Oh, okay, great. I'm going to check the audio output of my computer. Dan, if it's okay. Thank you. We'll stop that. Yep. Oops. I was trying to manage a smooth transition. We are almost there, and we will start. Yep. Okay, so thank you for coming. The intro said a lot already, but I will just mention that indeed, since 2016, I've been heading this brand for Sennheiser called AMBEO, which is everything about immersive audio in the company, and that means that I have been very involved in the foray of Sennheiser into the worlds of virtual reality and augmented reality for a number of years. And then 3 years ago, I focused my attention and my time on something very different, which is the automotive industry, where my task is now to start and grow a new business unit licensing our brand and software to car manufacturers eager to develop new experiences, sound experiences and voice communication experiences for their cars. And then, also said earlier, I was further distracted away from XR music, my work at AMBEO initially, to advise this startup in health. So first, these distractions obviously allowed me to take some distance and gave me a perspective on how much more there is for us to do to bring XR to a state where it has an impact on the everyday life of people, where they can bring XR into their daily routine, say 9 to 5. And then soon after, interestingly, those two fields that took me away, so automotive and health, are taking me back to XRs with new applications that these two fields begs for, and that XR, including XR audio, can address. So in this presentation, I'd like to share with you some of the things I've learned or humbly explored in these three categories of applications: music, automotive, and health. And maybe open up some areas worth further exploration in the search for this most impactful XR experience yet to be defined. Okay, so yeah, AMBEO. These are you see at the bottom, the 4 parts of the content creation pipeline, in which we have been very active, from capturing all the way through listening of immersive audio content, with in between these stages of mixing and post-processing, also part of this pipeline. I would say that to date, we are most active in those middle parts at Sennheiser, and I will talk about that, but I will start with the other 2 ends in which I personally have been more involved. So starting with content creation and the AMBEO virtual reality microphone, that was in fact in 2016 the first AMBEO labeled product by Sennheiser. There is no groundbreaking technology there. It is a simple single order, first order ambisonic microphone, yet I dare to call it a hero. Is my audio okay? Yeah, okay. I dare to call it a hero product because, innovation doesn't have to be groundbreaking science. I have to admit, this product immediately found its market just by the fact of finding the right sweet spot between the size of the microphone, it had to be small, the sound quality, it had to sound decently good, and its price. And it became, as I said, quite successful on this niche market of VR content creation, and paid off for its development in record time, and to date is still sold many times every month with very little incentive or push from our company. So a hero product, yet in the body of a vocal microphone, because to hit the market at the right time, and timing was essential to make it a success. We had to sacrifice a few things, and that included, not giving this product that deserved to have, let's say, an iconic design, because it was the first in a new industry. So we could have decently, gave it a distinctive look, but no, to make it on time, we just reused tooling and manufacturing chain we had with a vocal microphone, and that's why it looks like it, just like a simple vocal microphone, until, of course, you unscrew the grill and see the capsules. So this is a microphone in use. It is used for non-VR applications also. In that case here, for a music video where the artists, Tobias Preissig and his band Ego Pusher, wanted to create an exciting, immersive binaural mix to go on top of their flat video. You may, of course, the microphone is not used by itself. I mean, it's not alone. It's complemented by a number of spot mics which are mixed into the mix, into the rest of the sound coming from the VR mic. And you can ask, why doesn't he use a dummy head? We do have dummy heads in our portfolio. It's the KU100 by Neumann. A couple of reasons why the VR mic became so popular for binaural recording. First, because due to its format, it gives a lot of flexibility to the sound engineer after the recording. Choose perspective, rotate a little bit here and there to fine-tune the point of view. And also, for example, gives the ability to choose the HRTF to use for the decoding in post. And that can be decided, therefore, with more flexibility. But I'm going to be honest with you, the main reason why they use the VR mic and not a dummy head, it's because the VR mic is low profile and it doesn't, hide anybody or doesn't take too much attention on the video, because after all, it looks just like another vocal mic. So, of course, it's also used for VR. It's the reason for why this microphone was created. And I was fortunate to see it in action in a live music context at a recent edition of the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland. And I was backstage attending on goggles the sound check of an artist I really like, Angélique Kidjo, and I was fascinated by the experience and the ability to be so close to the artist and have really the front stage. Especially since after the sound check, I went back to the pit, quite in front, but there were always taller people than me in front of me, and just longed to go back backstage to get to the VR experience. When I was in the pit, in the crowd, I really didn't feel like going left or right to change my perspective on the experience. But when I was in the VR experience during that sound check, I could imagine soon enough that I would have gotten a little bit bored with the ability to just look right and left, to explore this music experience. And some companies, I'm thinking of Melody VR, if you know, I've tried to address this problem by offering viewers, remote viewers of live music performances, different point of view by multiplying the number of 360 cameras. So basically, I can attend the performance and select or jump between different cameras. And that's one way to make the VR experience even more engaging. But obviously, and it was discussed yesterday a little bit, the possibility to go and move freely in the sound scene is yet, another huge step to make live or music in VR, music VR experiences extremely compelling, and perhaps become this impactful XR experience we're looking for. So I'll talk a little bit about 6 degrees of freedom. Again, brilliantly discussed yesterday. I'll add my humble contribution here. What you see here is a volumetric capture of a volumetric video, which is showing a 3D a 3D hologram that you can then view from all perspectives and all positions. The way it's done is that this performer will be placed in the middle of a circle of cameras. And out of the recorded images, a 3D model is going to be built. And that 3D model is then going to be rendered on a mobile device, a computer, or, of course, goggles. This is the way, let's say, a typical volumetric capture studio looks like, at least when I was involved a few years ago. There are several of those. Imagine a recording area that's not much bigger than 2 to 3 meters in diameter. So I think that would be 6 to 9 feet, right? Cylinder, so it's not big, it's good for one performer, perhaps two. You've got a bunch of cameras all around. Think 4K cameras at least, 20, 30 of them. And of course, the question becomes, how do I capture the sound of my hologram? One performers is one thing, maybe two, how do I do that? So the first, and we got quite involved in trying to address this question. The baseline to be used is a gooseneck is a lavalier microphone. So you put the lavalier on the actor, and that's what you record. This comes with a few problems. First, of course, the cameras see everything, so you really have to conceal the microphone, the body pack. And if you want to do it well, it takes quite a lot of time. So there was a wish expressed by the studios to create a solution for microphone techniques to capture holographic audio, if I may say, or volumetric audio, without the use of a mic and the proximity or on the talents. The work was done on our side by the research team in San Francisco at Sennheiser, and the way we approached it was to distribute a number, I mean more than two, but not a huge number, of highly directive microphones around the cylinder. Highly directive such as shotguns or microphone arrays. And an interesting problem that became apparent that we had to solve was the need to track the position and the orientation of the talent inside the recording zone with relying on our microphones alone. So we devised some acoustic techniques to do just that, tracking the talent and perhaps more complex, tracking their orientation. That information was then sent to the post-processing unit that had to be quite tightly integrated with the video workflow and would inform beamforming, so how you combine the microphones to really capture the voice signal, and microphone mixing techniques automatized through the data, the metadata we would send. And with that, we got quite good results for high-quality dialogue with lower reverberation. And that's a contribution we've made to the field so far. Yeah, move forward 3 years later, in fact, a month ago. What you see here is a real-life volumetric capture of not one or two performers, but actually 47 musicians, and on a budget. Okay, this probably costs quite a lot, but not, it's not a studio quality recording. And I just find it interesting how that was done. I will give the credits here to the Mahler Chamber Orchestra and Henrik Opperman, who has been in this community for many years. He's a visionary practitioner of immersive audio and VR in particular, and we are very fortunate to work with him and have been working with him for many years. So what you see here are iPad Pros, and there were, I think, 9 of them for the 47 musicians, and then an app that they use, I think it's called Eve, to capture these holograms. Now, the need to hide and conceal the mic still exists, and the way they solved it is they did 2 takes. Okay, 1 take for the sound with all the microphones that, and one take with no microphone, where basically the musicians are miming or not recorded for sound, but just for their image. And then you have to hope that the two kind of are in sync. Talking about the way the sound was recorded, here the favorite approach that Henrik would have wished to use is, and I'm sorry for bringing up products of my company, but I think it's interesting. We have this microphone called the MKH800 Twin, which has a particularity of hosting two capsules, two cardioid capsules. You get the output of the two channels at the output of the mic, which enables you to choose the pattern of your mic after the fact. So giving a lot of flexibility. So the idea of Henrik was to really have 47 MKH800 twins, one on each musician, so that he can then derive the rules I will talk about to control distance. Not possible for practical reason, for cost reason. He just grouped the musicians, used 24 instead of 47, and complemented those with a bunch of miniature clip microphones that you see here. The field, it seems to me at least, is still nascent, and there's lots of best practices to be defined. So I'm just going to describe the way he approached it, because of course, when you think about how to create a plausible sound experience for the people who are going to wander inside the orchestra, you need to define a lot of rules for the sound, or your sound, the output of your sound, your microphones to be combined to create this experience. All the channels, and there were hundreds of channels that were recorded, are sent to a game engine, and some rules are coded to control the sound experience. One particular example I can mention is how do you combine the microphones to give a sense of distance? So when you approach the instrument, you get a sense that you are close to it, and when you're away, less close to it. So in his case, he used precisely the combination of these two capsules from the twin microphones, doing so that when you're close, it's like a cardioid very close to the body of the instruments, where you hear all the fine details, the strings or the bow gliding on the strings and the breath of the musicians. And then as you move away from the instrument, you hear more of the figure of 8 of the twin microphones with more space, more of the other instruments, more room. It's a little bit of magic, I think, about how we are approaching this to this date, but it's very exciting to be in this field at this moment. So I said, game engine is used to render all of this, and at the end, this is what people will get to experience. This is going to be launched in April in Germany. And as you can see, resolution is not film quality, but it is. I've seen some of that already, and it's quite mesmerizing to be able to walk between those musicians and experiences for the first time. So I would say it's good enough to start. And the way you experience it is that you wear goggles, Oculus goggles that are tethered to a laptop where the computing is done. And the experience will be available for 4 people at a time, with, of course, they will be tracked, and hopefully they won't bump into each other. But this is maybe giving us a glance at what XR could bring to the field of music experiences, and perhaps create as big a revolution as MTV created way back when. And in fact, since MTV, not much has happened in the way music videos are done. They are flat, and it's a passive experience. And with the advance and progress that we've seen in volumetric capture, 6 degrees of freedom technologies, suddenly the door is open for artists to find new ways to express themselves, and also for fans to be immersed in an unbounded new reality of a new experience of the music. So perhaps, we can call it XR MTV, and this is perhaps the next big thing that will bring XR to mainstream by bringing it to everybody's living room. I'm going to move forward and talk about the other end of the chain and some experiments we've conducted. I don't want to spend too much time on that one, but still I found it super fun personally. So this is a product we've done. I'm talking about the mount. That's the product. We're using some ear cups from our DJ headphones, the HD25, and a mount to make sure that the sound is displayed with a certain sound quality, but privately. The application and who bought it is Europa Park, which is one of the largest theme parks in Europe. And yeah, being the director of AMBEO, I had to do this. I have to test everything we do. And believe me, I have a big fear of roller coasters. So but anyway, you arrive there, and they give you a choice between 3 different rides, virtual rides. So having privacy is important, because my neighbor may just be in a different space, like literally, than I am. And then you ride, and I wanted to mention it's not complex. There's no rocket science in the product we created there, but the impact was incredible because it completely alleviated my fear of the roller coaster. I, in fact, enjoy myself tremendously in my spaceship. And I don't know if theme parks are the killer applications we're looking for impact, but the ability XR has to distract you in the way it did for me to forget my fear. Yesterday it was mentioned, alleviating or helping people forget their pain is incredible and very powerful. So I want to spend a little bit more time on the playback side for this here, where we looked into how we can bring, as augmented reality calls for, the reality into or blend the reality of sound around you with virtual audio. So we've been creating and further exploring various headsets for this, all able to play back sound as a headset. So the virtual world is played back through your headphones, but then the physical world is mediated back into the virtual world through microphones on the outside, placed on the outside of the headset. You can see here very crudely. So basically, we call this feature transparent hearing, and again, it's the ability to capture the sound around you and blend it gracefully with your virtual audio. One of the most advanced projects we've done on this topic is in partnership with Magic Leap. Hi, David. Hi, Jean-Marc. And so you don't see it here, but there's such a little piece of earbuds here in the ear of my colleague, Lawrence. And to showcase the benefit of such transparent hearing feature, we created a companion app called the AMBEO Augmented Audio Lab, running on the glasses of Magic Leap, which is a music game in which participants or wearers of the equipment are invited to play with layers of loops which are pre-recorded and encouraged to add to it with loops they record themselves with the devices, and then position the sound in space and create a soundscape in their living room or whatever they are, and where they can walk. I'm actually going to show you what it looks like with this little video where we'll need some sound. Yep. Okay. So that's it for, yeah. Thanks for them. It was a pure work of love and blood and tears, but we're very happy about it. I would like to close my my AMBEO XR music chapter of this presentation with by just talking about these other two modules we briefly mentioned, so the mixing and the post-processing for immersive audio, and the work done currently being done by our daughter company called Dear Reality. This is definitely the field where today we as a company are the most active, still contributing to the field of our field of AR and VR. So interestingly, immersive audio, is about sound all around you, and yet the interfaces that we first had to create this content are 2D, whether we're talking about a mixing console, physical interface, or a plug-in user interface where you have one or two windows to try and figure out space and position in space. So as a result, and let's talk about linear content for now, when you're creating your VR experience, for example, or just any immersive audio experience, you're going to go between your digital audio workstation where you're tuning your stuff, your panning in particular, and many other parameters. But then when you want to be sure about what you're doing, you have to stop there, render, put the goggles, and then be in the experience to check if it's working. And then if you have to modify something, you put the goggles back off, and then go back to your station, which is really a pain and very time-consuming. So what Dear Reality did early on is that they created this Spatial Connect product in which the door is brought with you inside the medium of VR and enables you to mix your immersive audio content in VR, so you can really immediately see in your mind where you're putting things and have access to all these other parameters not related to panning that are very important for your mix. That's what you see here. This is a screenshot of what Spatial Connects, how it works for example, creating Atmos audio for a movie. Now, I'm not going to be able to say too much about this, but clearly we are very interested in bringing the same context, or the same concept, sorry, for interactive XR experiences. We're not talking about DAW anymore, we are talking about other typical tools that are used to create those interactive experiences. And yeah, maybe Brian will say more during the next panel, but some exciting things are coming in this area as well. And that's it for my first chapter, the one I have stepped a little bit out of in the past few years to enter a new world, the world of automotive, which I like to touch on for a few minutes, because interestingly, while I didn't go for XR, it's taking me back to XR, and we'll see why. So the choice of automotive was not an obvious choice for me, because I am the proud non-owner of a car. I use mobility, of course, a lot, but I always find other ways, alternative ways, which include, renting a car here and there. But having said that, I became quite fan and passionate about the topic, because the industry, it's really at a very exciting moment, pushed by those four very big trends, which I will just describe shortly in a second, which call for super exciting new audio experiences in the car, whether it's for entertainment or voice communication. So quickly, those four trends are electrification. 2030, we will all see electric cars and only electric cars on the road, more or less. A lot of incentive goes to make people buy electric. Interesting for sound. It makes cabins more quiet. We can enjoy more sound. But to be honest, the big and exciting challenge is elsewhere. It's a war on weight. Today, electric cars, on average, weigh 40% more than their combustion engine equivalent, which creates a big problem for range. And so every kilo you can save to the car manufacturers has a lot of value. Sound system, 6 kilos, 10 kilos, depending. So if you can bring software that can help reduce this weight, they love you. The second trend is connectivity, which is mostly brought by all the needs of autonomous driving. but as a side benefit to bring all the same content you have in your living room to your car. And so, of course, for consumers, the expectation is that the same behaviors and uses you have of content in your home are expected to be in the car as well. You order or you talk to Alexa at home, you want to talk to Alexa in your car. You do Dolby Atmos content at home, you want to do the same in the car, which is interesting for us. Shared mobility is about precisely not only a car, but sharing a car with others, which means that software-based features that you can download and offload based on demand and service are very thought after. And again, there's a lot you can do about scalable entertainment services and scalable voice communication services. And finally, autonomous driving. So here, imagine your hands are off the steering wheel, your eyes are off the road. You have plenty of time in your car to do stuff. It could be that, in fact, at that point, you don't watch movies in your living room anymore. You use the time in your car to do that, because after all, the car, even today, is probably the best sound system you have. Okay, it has a number of loudspeakers, way more likely that you have in your living room, at least for sure me. Same thing, your remote meetings. Let's use time productively and not lose it while I am on the road. And the car may be the only place you have to work where you're not in an open space, where you can have conversation privately. So again, very interesting trend for sound. And this is, I will show you a couple of examples of where car manufacturers and suppliers are going. That brings us back to XR use cases. So here in that case, it's XPeng, and today it's a premium car manufacturers based in China. And today they are offering you to configure your car so that when it's not driving, for now, you can have a full width screen and projector to enjoy your media. So full width, we mean about 2 meters, and that's 6 feet, and that's not bad. But how about 200 feet? When you can use XR glasses, so that's another car manufacturer, that's NIO, who partnered with Nreal, that makes the Air glasses, and in this special edition that is offered to the NIO customers, the people in the car can enjoy this huge screen movie experience. Of course, again, it is when the car is on park for the driver, for now. Another application, now it's a supplier, Holoride, partly owned by Audi. And Holoride provide VR experiences or VR games inside the car that have the particularity of being in perfect synchronization with the path the car is taking and some driving information such as acceleration, brakes, making, of course, the VR experience quite engaging. What's interesting is that it is also, and this is for backseat passengers, and what's interesting is that by doing so, this synchronization brings the congruence of senses that we were discussing yesterday, and makes people who tend to be subject to motion sickness, less sick. In fact, 3 times less sick when they play the Holoride game. And final information about them, their platform is open source, which means that content creators are invited to contribute, to distribute and sell their games to the people subscribing to the Holoride service. Final, let's say a little bit provocative concept by another supplier called Were. Were is providing a holographic display, the things in the windshield where you see the directions, you see the speed and some other information in front of you. That's existing today. And their concept is for this car, which they called the Metaverse on Wheels, and announced to launch in 4 years, where the 4 people in the car can use this holographic display through glass. So now we are talking about augmented reality without glasses. And this is how they foresee this will look like. You have joysticks in the armrest. You can load an experience that will be individual to you. The other two don't have to be in that experience, can have their own. And of course, you can play or meet or interact with anybody in your corner of the metaverse outside of the car. This is, in fact, this same concept is actually what they call a novel or disruptive ride-hailing concept. So you can also, when you book the car, ask for an authorized driver. And that means the 3 people in the car can actually play while this guy is driving the car. And I think it's interesting for what it means for sound. Obviously the person here has a display of a big 360 view of the car. The car is loaded with sensors. We're talking about a number of cameras, number of ultrasonic sensors, LiDAR. But how about sound? Okay, as was also said yesterday, if you want, sound can help you with safety because of faster reaction time. So, how do we capture the sound around the car, enabling this person to have a full situational awareness of what's happening in this car so that he can bring the maximum safety to the ride? That's an open question. I'm going to finish this part of automotive talking about something that interests us in particular. So, of course, we work on the playback side trying to address all the use cases I just described, but one that has not been yet brought up, but was alluded to before, is about meetings in the car while you're driving and how to make that experience the best. So here you see a picture with people around the table, and you imagine somebody remote, in our case in the car, dialing in, like anybody remote. I'm sure you can all speak to that. You will tend to feel, we tend to feel disconnected from the group. It's sometimes hard to understand the dynamics of the meeting. You don't know who is speaking when, and you lose a lot of the natural, let's say, communication gesture, that would help you perhaps, interrupt gracefully to make a point. So, on the other side, we also know that if we can bring this remote participant together with the others in a virtual meeting room, giving them a sense of being together, these drawbacks disappear. So that's a big area of work that we're doing right now in this field of automotive solutions. And one of the things that helps us a lot is our experience with meeting rooms. It's actually a corporate picture you see by Sennheiser. And this microphone on top is the Team Connect ceiling that will detect who is talking in the room and then inform the beamformer. So there's several mics, at least in this microphone, to zoom at that person, to beam at the mouth of that person to collect clear speech. So speech, metadata, and position, that's a good place to start to create a virtual meeting room in the car cabin for a sense of, as I said, togetherness in the same virtual meeting room. This was an audio-only application, and this is another one, audio-first application, tapping into another facet of augmented reality, which is self-augmentation, and which in my smooth segue into the last part of my presentation, having to do with health, and in particular, mental health here. So, a couple of years ago, I was very fortunate to join 2 friends of mine as they were thinking about how to frame their new company. Their new company is now called EarKick, and EarKick aims at creating the first real-time mental tracker, or tracker for mental health, sorry, I should say. The context of that is that, like physical health, mental health is a continuum, and you should not care about your mental health just like you have, a psychological crisis. In fact, every day, we are on this continuum for super balanced mental health to difficult or challenging or mental health issues, and it would be worthwhile to know where we sit. And when things go bad, being able to measure how much progress we make with all the remedies or interventions that exist. In fact, there are about 30,000 apps that help you get better mentally, but it's a little bit like having 30,000 diets and not a single scale that helps you track your daily progress. So that's what we're trying to do with EarKick, and audio plays a big part in that. You may ask why. I will further say that hearables are a big component, not good enough today, but we look forward to further progress because hearables enable to collect the data we need to inform mental health or the status of mental health. And of course, as you can play back, these auditory interventions is a fabulous companion to help one get better. So which data are we talking about? Just giving a quick glance. Voice in particular is a powerful biomarker for mental health. You see the work here of Daniel Lowe from MIT and Harvard Biotech Lab, where you can see, for example, if you're interested in tracking anxiety, you can see that the fundamental frequency of your voice, other parameters like jitter and shimmer of your voice are a good indicator of where you sit on this continuum. So better hearables equipped with these microphones, the same I was mentioning before, I mean better ones, that enable to capture your own speech. Even when you're whispering, even your breathing pattern can bring a lot of insights to give you a full picture of your mental health status. And so that's another avenue for improvement. Moving on. Now, these are a very expensive pair of VR goggles. This is the Da Vinci robot system. It is used for robotic surgery. In fact, it has the largest market share for robotic surgery. It has more than 6,000 of them have been bought in hospitals for operating rooms across the world, and they've completed more than 8.5 million procedures. In fact, a couple of them were done on loved ones, so which took me, which grabbed my interest for the topic, and I find it super fascinating. And in fact, I see that perhaps audio can help. I'm going to say why. I think it's a long stretch, but I thank you in advance for indulging me with that. So the way it works is that the surgeons are sitting immersed in these goggles and can see very high definition 3D pictures of the body they are operating on. They are controlling instruments, so the instruments on the body are here, but they are controlled remotely via these controllers. Today they are in the room. You can see how further down the road they could be operating from far away, bringing even more possibilities to modern surgeries. But anyway, the fact that, let's put it this way, the traditional minimally invasive surgery brings as a surgeon here, looking at various 2D screens, they have to mentally recreate the 3D image. It's a lot of cognitive load. Here, much easier, much more intuitive. In addition, because of the mediation between the joysticks, I call them joysticks, and the tools in the body, you can reduce tremor. So it's this approach to surgery leads most often to less bleeding and less post-operation pain. So this is good, but not always. In fact, there is a big problem, which is haptic feedback. So the fact that the hands are on these controllers and disconnected from the tissue they are operating on sometimes leads to longer procedures, because you need to be extra careful, and sometimes to surgical errors, like tissue damage, because of this absence of feedback. So here is my thesis, is short of haptic gloves that would be providing the feedback, but would be yet another layer between the hands and the body. Can audio provide a quick and easy solution to mediate this haptic feedback? Totally out of this world? Not completely. So let me show you another picture. which makes me actually ask if this thesis I just mentioned is plausible or not. So this is Neil Harbison, the world's first legally recognized cyborg. So Neil was born without the ability to see colors. And in 2004, he got implanted this antenna that's fixed. I mean, on the one hand, it has a camera that can see colors. On the other hand, on the occipital bone, there are some vibrations that will react to the colors seen by the camera. These vibrations, in turn, through bone conduction, become sound. And basically, Neil now hears colors. And of course, not only colors we can see, he also hears ultraviolet, infrared. Why not? The point being that with enough training, audio was able to convey a sense of color. So can audio be used to provide this haptic feedback surgeons need and be the hero that will help robotic surgery continue its progress and in modern surgery? I don't know, but why not? Last point I want to make about XR and health. It's about social and emotional enrichment in later life. And in particular, I'd like to highlight the fantastic work done by Dr. Waycott at the Interaction Design Lab in Melbourne. Now, Birdly, which I showed here, is probably a very bad idea to use as an experience for older age care. But actually, have other people tried it? Or am I the only one? Ah, great. So maybe you'll tell me what you think, but I kept it here because nonetheless, I think it's a very powerful experience that highlights a little bit the potential, or pretty much the potential of VR for this age group category. So Birdly is an experience I got to try where it was created. It's in Zurich at the time where I live, and basically you fly over a city and you control your height, you control your speed, and you have these fantastic headwinds that makes your hair blow. So you see the fan? And what's so great about this experience is that it extended my capability. It went beyond what I'm capable of doing. I was flying. It transported me into a completely different world. It engaged me. I was really sweating at the end. It's actually a lot of exercise. And it gave me a lot of stories to tell. And I think these are points that are very important when we think about XR application for or social and emotional enrichment in later life. Dr. Waycott has another way to approach it, and she highlights 3 main benefits that I brought by the XR apps developed for care homes, correct? Yeah. So the first one would be bringing joy through personalized engagement. Okay, so care homes can be very isolating and unmotivating environments, especially for those with higher physical and cognitive capabilities, because the group activities that are offered are typically leveled down. So that leads to self-isolation. And XR experience, or I should say VR experiences proposed in that context, as long as there are enough of them, enable residents to pick something they like and to push the experience to where they want or can. And that makes it very individualized and desirable. So one of the applications that she mentions is an underwater exploration application. It's called Ocean Rift. And okay, so you're underwater and you're swimming, or not swimming, but you're discovering the world. It's pretty relaxing. You could imagine the role sound could play in such applications. And but there's a but. Okay, this application for some, and for most often relaxing, can sometimes unexpectedly trigger feels. If you're not, I mean, everybody can become afraid of suddenly a 3D sea creatures appearing in front of you, but maybe even the most sensitive population even more so, or sometimes the fear of being trapped underwater could trigger some some very unpleasant and counterproductive reactions. So if the XR applications are built so that they can receive some of that feedback and adapt, that would make this experience even safer for resident care and more desirable. Second application is reminiscence, so the ability to remember events of the past of one's life has been shown to be extremely important to reduce loneliness, anxiety, and depression. And there is an app, for example, that she mentions called Wander, that's based on Google Street View, that teletransport you into place where you used to travel or used to live, and provide the benefits of reminiscence. Of course, I think you will agree that sound has a lot to play in such applications as, sound can bring, I hear a sound and it brings me back to, I hear crickets, I remember Provence. I hear my daughter when she was 4, I remember exactly this moment and when she was, when he was taken. So sound convey a lot of emotions in that respect. And finally, perhaps the field with the most pages to write is the field of social VR and the ability to provide care homes with applications that enable them to feel connected to the outside world and engage in a safe environment where they won't risk to break or any bones or lose themselves collectively with others. So that, to my understanding, is a field where a lot of creativity has yet to be unleashed. So I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm going to leave you with one last picture, which is quite personal. It's my family, as they are experiencing the AMBEO lab, the Magic Leap experience I was talking to you before. It's not so important, because what I see here is our archetypal early adopter target group, in that case my nephews, who are not the ones wearing the glasses, while an unsuspected other target group, in that case my mother, is enjoying herself way too much to give away the glasses. And the point I want to make is that, if we are all wishing for this big, impactful XR application that's going to touch the life of many deeply and often, 9 to 5, then I think we need to keep our minds open to new applications and a new population, perhaps today in our blind spot, to serve. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Véronique. So next we have a post-keynote panel who's going to start setting up. While you guys are setting up, I just wanted to make a quick announcement. If you sign up for the HRTF measurement at Meta, just be aware that your time slot might not be showing the Pacific time zone. It might be the local time when you booked your time slot. So just, if you're not sure, please either find Ella in the back of the room, or there's also a table right outside. You can ask for information. So, and don't be late for your appointment.
And one more quick announcement for the panel discussion about to start. At the Q&A at the end, if you would, the volunteer team has put some bright orange tape on this side where we'd like you to stand before coming up to the mic so that you don't block the cameras. It looks like we didn't do our Q&A for Véronique. I'm so sorry. We completely. And it looks like there is one question. So maybe we'll just wing it. Go ahead and ask your question, and since you're up there.
Well, thank you. There we go. Actually, it's not a question. I just thank you for the wonderful presentation, Véronique. And I just want to say that working with you on the AMBEO VR lab was just an amazing experience. It's still my favorite app of anything we've done on the Magic Leap platform, and I brought my Magic Leap device with me specifically to show off that app to anybody that wants to see it. So I'll be around, and if you want to see that in practice, it's truly amazing. I've continued to be blown away by it.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Veronique, we have one more question here from one of our team.
I'd like to repeat Anastasia's question from yesterday about the mental health evaluation using voice. Who's guarding that data to protect the privacy?
Absolutely, very important topic. So I'm going to say in the case I know well, which is the topic of AirKick, all the data are kept on the phone and processing done at the edge, so never in the cloud. So yeah, of course, you can only take my word for it, but this is a major concern. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Do I understand that we're going to just go straight into the panel? Looks like our panel's here.
Yeah. Yes, and
so
I'm going to multi-exchange hat,
Fabulous.
and I'll introduce our panel chair, if it's okay.
Sure. I just want to make sure that our remote panelist is ready.
Yep.
And also, do we have the slide for the... Okay, great. So we'll just take one moment to make sure all our tech is in order.
I gave it. I left it down. You like it?
Okay, let me see.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Okay, we have the right order.
You ready?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. Then I'm going to introduce the lead or the chair of the next panel, which is Immersion Science and Application. Agnieszka Roginska put this panel together. Agnieszka is a professor of music technology at New York University. She conducts research in the simulation and applications of immersive and 3D audio, including the capture, analysis, and synthesis of auditory environments. Applications of her work include augmented and virtual reality, gaming, mission-critical, and augmented acoustic sensing. She is the author of numerous publications on the topics of acoustics and psychoacoustics of immersive audio. Agnieszka is a fellow of the Audio Engineering Society and a past president of the Audio Engineering Society. She is a faculty sponsor of the Society for Women in Technology at NYU. Thanks, Agnieszka.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Véronique, for the introduction and also for setting up this panel discussion so well with your keynote. So thank you very much for that. So today we wanted to take this next hour, and I'm humbled here to be with this excellent group of experts and from various fields in immersive sound. And I wanted to take the next hour to dive a little bit deeper into this idea of immersion that Véronique so eloquently discussed this morning during her keynote. And I do think also we are winning the prize for the largest panel at the AVAR conference. We have one remote panelist, and we are 6 here in person. So I would like to first maybe kick off this panel discussion, ask every one of you here to introduce yourself, where you're working at, and also what kind of, maybe briefly, because we'll maybe dive a little bit deeper later, what kind of cool stuff you are working on.
Oh, goodness. So I will start, I guess. I'm Scott. I'm the audio experience manager at Meta Reality Labs Research. So a lot of the papers that you've been seeing in some of the other talks are from the amazing scientists that I get to work with, and my team translates that science into user experiences. So Veronique's keynote really resonated with me. It's always amazing to be able to take research out of the lab and turn it into something that people can actually experience directly and hear directly. And I think one of the things that I'm really interested in that we've been working on is moving beyond just abstract sounds or even trying to make hyper-realistic sounds and getting towards people and making connections. that's kind of a thing at my company. And so being able to have these experiences where I feel like I'm talking with another person and they're really there with me, it's a whole other level of interaction and immersion to be able to share an experience, and there's a real person there. It's not just an amazing crafted sound that I've created, but it's a real person who's hearing me and is talking with me. And when we create experiences where they feel like they're in my environment or I'm in their environment, or we're both together in a virtual environment, that's really powerful. So that's a lot of the exciting work that we're working on. So,
Thank you,
Joy?
Scott.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Joy Lyons. I'm a Senior Director of Audio Technology at Harman. So Harman owns a lot of brands like JBL and AKG and Revel, and it goes on and on. So Harman's a huge audio company, and I'm part of the corporate research division. So we work on exciting technologies that are 2 to 4 years in the future. Specifically, my group focuses on immersive audio and then also artificial intelligence applications related to audio. So we do a lot of simulations, a lot of spatial audio, a lot of perceptual research, and then we transfer that all the information and the technology we make to our product groups, which work in automotive, which work in consumer, work in professional applications. Thanks.
Thank you. Patrick?
Hi, Patrick Flanagan, audio experience scientist at Logitech. I mainly focus on gaming applications in the context of spatial audio. And cool stuff that we're working on is, I guess, how to better bridge the gap between the simulation that you're in and the hardware that you're using to connect to that simulation.
Stefania?
Hi, I am Stefania. I'm professor at Aalborg University in Copenhagen, where I direct a lab that is called the Multisensory Experience Lab, where we work on both development of technologies, but also we really like to take it outside the lab and make populations in need use them to improve their daily life. For example, people with hearing impairments, or what resonates me very much with Veronique's talk is working with people in retirement home where they can use these technologies to move to places that they can visit virtually because they cannot go there anymore physically.
My name is Brian. I've worked for Sennheiser on topics for VR and XR for the past almost 7 years now, starting with the VR mic, but recently things that we've been working on, include this AMBEO 2-channel spatial audio, this new accessible format for spatial audio delivery that we did with Netflix, recently announced, as well as, many of the projects that Veronique mentioned during her keynote. But my role primarily at the company is to sit between scientists and customers, and serve as a translator, bringing, industry trends, how artists are pushing the boundaries of existing technology, bringing that to researchers and vice versa, trying to serve as the kind of intermediary between our entertainment industry partners, creative partners, and our, research scientists in the lab.
Great. And we have Brad joining us remotely.
Check 1, 2. Hello.
Hi.
So yeah, Brad Faringo. Scott's a colleague at Meta. It's great to see you again. I've been blessed to work with him and a bunch of those scientists, and it's interesting to hear a lot of the panel talk. I've also been in AR for a while with Rift 2, Quest 2, Spectacles, and now in the smallest company in the world, Magic Leap. So I'm the director of audio UX and prototyping there, and we're focusing on R&D and innovations for sonic experiences. And I guess the company goal and mission would be to extend abilities to our users and those that wear the product. So right now we're focused on enterprise, as I'm sure you've heard, but we're ultimately building for users, which is anyone. So the area of audio, as we all know, more painfully than most, has been neglected, we'll say, but also has the most opportunity for expansion and growth. So it's a very exciting time.
Great, thank you. So I think we're all very excited to dive into the applications part of the discussion, but I first want to bring us to the science part, because I think it's so important for us to, first of all, understand what it is that we're talking about. And the word here in this panel is immersion. And it's a buzzword, we all use it, maybe we all have slightly different definitions of it. So I'd like to first ask each one of you to give your definition, maybe not the definition, but your definition of what you think about when we're talking about immersion. And also, very importantly, how do we measure that? What is the yardstick, that metric that you use to measure immersion? I'll mix it up a little bit now. Stefania, let's start with you.
Okay, so I mean, obviously immersion is one of those terms that all of us have an understanding of what it is, but it's very hard to define. And I'm considering mostly the cognitive side of immersion, so the ability to be completely absorbed in an experience in such a way that everything that is around us is neglected. So this is one way of defining immersion. And to measure it, that is another holy grail. So if we consider the definition that I just proposed, I didn't propose it, but this possible definition, then one way to measure immersion is by imposing some distraction. So if you are so absorbed in an experience that you don't notice the outside world, then can we create some distractors and see if those distractors are noticed? And the more we are immersed, the more these distractors, they might need to be enlarged. So, for example, louder sound or a bigger haptic experience if we are visually immersed. So, and also we could consider, I mean, is immersion a binary concept? I mean, are we immersed or not? Or is it continuous? And so there is, in the virtual reality community, there's lots of work on mostly a quantitative measure of immersion using questionnaires. But that is probably, of course, the issue that we know with questionnaires is the fact that they are used after the experience, so you're not really measuring while you're in the experience. So they have their drawbacks. And also, one of the questions is, I mean, which element are we measuring? Immersion is such a multidimensional phenomenon that maybe we should pinpoint an element that we want to address and focus on that and its influence on the overall immersive experience.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of discussions being done between the immersion and engagement and how those two relate.
And the flow and the presence, all these kind of connected elements.
Patrick, how about you?
Yeah, well, I think she summed it up quite well, that it's the singular focus of the action that you're doing. So if you're riding a bike, you're focused on riding the bike. Your mechanics are moving the way that they should, and you have a mission. The same for in the context of video games. You like the experience that you're in. You like the content, and that's a major factor for being immersed. If you don't like the video game or the action that you're doing, you're not going to be as immersed or engaged in that experience. And how to measure that is, like she was saying, questionnaires, but are there other biosignals that are going on in the brain or eye movements that you could correlate to these questionnaires and look at that continuum of, I just started to play the game, I'm slightly immersed, or my heart rate is like stabilizing, and now I'm deeply immersed. I no longer am focused on the outside world and heavily involved in the simulation that I'm in, and then I come out of it. Could you map that to brain signals and other physiological responses?
Great, thank you. Scott, how about you?
I was going to say, I would love for us to have a parallel conversation of what is the role of immersion in augmented reality, because the definitions so far have been about the real world has melted away and I am just focused on this virtual space. And in augmented reality, we kind of have the opposite goal. We want to, give you more information, grant you, the ability to bring things from the virtual into the real. And I've had immersive AR experiences. I watch my kids play Pokemon Go still, and they are definitely immersed. And yet they are, it's not that they're blocking out the real world. My daughter has spent many minutes watching cute Pokemon, hop around in the park near our house, and that is definitely an example of being immersed in AR. So I think that's an interesting part of the conversation. I'd love to get other panelists' feedback on that. And then I would also say another key component is affordance. What can I actually do in this space? Because if I'm in an experience that we claim to be immersive, but all I can do is be a passive participant, I can't pick anything up, I can't talk with other people, I can't make these connections, then is that truly immersive, or is that just, you know, is the passivity something that keeps it from really being something that's all enveloping? Because for telepresence, as an example, to go back to what I was talking about before, I think sort of the key to immersion would be, can I have a full bandwidth, high stakes, emotional conversation with somebody? Can we get to this future where, you know, I could talk with my parents, you know, during a time where we're not able to see each other in person and feel like we've actually seen each other in person? And you start getting glimpses of that today with, like with Horizon Workrooms, our tool for, you know, having telepresence VR meetings. And we talk about people saying, you know, they see each other the next day and they're like, oh, well, we just saw each other yesterday. And they're like, no, we didn't. We were actually in virtual reality. But I remember the conversations that I have in that experience much better than the ones that I have on like a Zoom call. So I think these are all different signals toward immersion. But I guess I tried to pivot us towards the question of AR immersion. I'd love to hear if other panelists have feedback. Brad, what are your thoughts? To throw it your way. Sorry, I didn't mean to moderate there.
Yeah, we've been aligned in our thinking for a while. That's why I miss working with you. But I totally agree. There's a few of us that believe AR is the future, and when you add segmented dimming, I mean, you could kind of get to VR too, but I might be the odd person out on this topic. If we want to say immersion is maybe at times synonymous with spatial audio, I've had conversations, pseudo arguments with colleagues about this. I think it's all about perception, and we've been using other technology as a proxy to create co-presence or communication or experiences that aren't real life. And for millennia, humans have been only wired for immersive audio. And it's not until this technology did we get away from that. So the more accurately we bring that back, I don't believe there's such thing as 2D. If you're looking at something on a screen, it's still a 3D pixel. You're not looking at an image, you're looking at a pixel. There's the illusion of a 2D object. So everything is really 3D. So how accurately can we take this contrivance to represent what is real to us and perceptually accurate so that it gives us what we're wired for? If there's any, if we combine maybe biofeedback, we could customize the experiences. So what I don't think we can do is say, here's the metrics that we need to meet, and it's just like fit and one size fits nobody. So if we had biofeedback that could adjust things, just like HRTF, like you're not going to get the perfect one setting for everyone. So we might want to have an adaptive system that takes a lot of things into consideration, whether it's the oris externa, whether it's use case, environments, things like that. So that's what I believe we have to solve for, is moving out of sterile environments that are more personal to more co-present and very ranging and changeable environments.
Okay, great.
And stay faithful to that reproduction.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things that you both mentioned is this idea of emotional response and biofeedback, and and I think that Patrick also, you were mentioning this, is getting measures that are not just subjective measures, but also objective measures in the emotional response. I'm curious to hear from Brian and from Joy, from the more transducer side of the panel, what you think about when we're talking about the sense of immersion.
Yeah, I think when you're making a product, you might narrow it more down to immersive audio is a system that's capable of surrounding you with an entire sound field. Whereas if you could play a single spatial object at one location in front of you, you wouldn't necessarily say that that's a very immersive sound, you know, if you're producing a system. And additionally, from an engagement standpoint, if something can command your entire attention, you know, a train wreck can also command your entire attention. So if we're in the lab and, you know, we've tuned something up and we're getting ready to make decisions regarding what is good, what is not good, you know, something that is fully engaging might be engaging for entirely the wrong reasons. And so I think, you know, if we break down the metrics to, you know, there's some presence to it. There's a naturalness element. You know, does it sound like it's appropriate? You know, I think having a lot of submetrics and then sort of going through and scaling all those independently. I mean, certainly asking or scaling something on immersion. Again, you know, in the context, how we would apply it would be how much of the sound field can we accurately reproduce? Yeah, maybe I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the broadcast perspective, which is where, you know, if we start thinking about, you know, the transition of where we've had stereo to transition to 5.1 to transition to, you know, immersive speaker systems, you know, this idea of enveloping sound is something that comes up in the definition a lot. You know, the ability to have height as well as behind, you know, it being a differentiator between the previous forms, 5.1 and 7.1 that came before. But, you know, I think in more general terms, I think immersion is a goal or can be a design goal of XR or AR or VR, right? Probably more so for VR in often cases. But I would argue that immersion is not analogous with spatial audio, right? I mean, spatial audio can, you know, not seek to immerse you, but maybe seek to provide you additional context within an environment, right? And I don't know if that would count as immersion. Immersion for me comes more in this sense of either like transportation, either like through focus on something or through an elevated experience like in film that allows for a greater suspension of disbelief or some idea that you can be lost in another world. So I think immersion for me is a creative goal that maybe is not always the goal for AR or spatial audio.
Right, because spatial audio can be there as the main goal to inform you or give you feedback or give you some sort of information about where you are, what you're doing, but can also entertain you without necessarily immersing you or engaging you. So I would like to shift over our discussion to talking about, I will ask, like, what are the key scientific questions that we need to be working on? But before I do that, I want to ask first, what have we gotten right so far when it comes to creating the sense of immersion? Like, where is the science now? What can we say? Like, we've done that, we've solved this problem, and now we can move on to the next problem. Is anybody who would like to jump in to say, what have we accomplished so far? Stefania.
Well, I mean, going back to what Scott was saying, I mean, definitely you can create also, so we have achieved to create immersive experiences. So either, well, what we were talking about, technological-wise, we can create immersive sound. We know how to do that. And also, it's hard to measure the impact of like something like the Pokemon Go, but it is definitely an immersive experience that takes you away from the real world or makes you interact with the real world in a different way that you do without the technology. And it is definitely an immersive experience. So even if we don't know how to measure the success, we have achieved, or the community has achieved experiences which are can be considered as immersive. Then actually one of the, since you were asking about what we don't know is why are they immersive? So that is a big question, I would say.
Okay, so in terms of reproduction, it sounds like what you're saying is that we know how to reproduce various forms of immersive sound. What other problems do you think we've solved so far, Scott?
I mean, I think, you know, you touched on it really well. I think it's experiences are leading the way. We have plenty of exemplars, and now we have to try and peel them apart and figure out, well, why does this work? Why does this hold my focus? What are the components that are, you know, we have all these difficult issues that we need to solve in terms of, you know, the user is in full control of their attention. There was Anastasia's table yesterday of sort of all of the really tough problems that we have in virtual and augmented reality in terms of the experiencer being in full control, and how do you create an experience that's curated when they control the camera, the movement, the, you know, what they do next. There's really very little that you can sort of gate, and yet we're still able to create these immersive, compelling experiences. So now the question is, well, how do we take what we've designed, what we've intuited, and backtrack from that to the actual underlying science so that it's reproducible and so that we can actually learn and understand, well, what are the key problems that are still left to be solved, which I think is kind of the big challenge. So I'd say experientially, we're far ahead of the science, which is kind of where I like to live. That'll be the the hypothesis of my talk coming up next. But I think it's a really great opportunity for us to peel apart these experiences that we curate, that we design, and say, you know, well, why did that work? That shouldn't have worked. Or this other experience that I thought would have worked, you know, completely fell over because there were distractions, or the experience did not create enough of a believability, or I just happened to experience it while someone was operating a vacuum cleaner in the other room and I had a terrible acoustic experience. Like all of these things that are completely out of the control of us as experience creators.
So in your specific applications that you're working on, what would you say is the one or two top problems, scientific problems, that you would love to see solved, or whether it's you or somebody else in this very smart room full of people, that you would like to see solved?
Maybe I can go.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. So, you know, I think, you know, to speak to the successes, I think the fact that we even have this type of conference with these many people here that are all focused on solving immersive audio, I think is a big win. It's not a niche topic in a university. It's making the transition into industry and into actual consumers' lives. And, you know, there's commercials, you know, for the formats, and the end consumer actually understands what immersive audio is and is actively polling for it. And I think that's a huge win. I think from a application standpoint, you know, we're still creating set pieces in terms of what immersive audio is, so we can, you know, get everything all together and just have this perfect experience if you're at the right location with the right equipment, and then you can have this immersive experience. And then hopefully, again, there's no vacuums, otherwise it all falls apart. So, you know, we're at a point, I think, where there's brand recognition. You have the people know what it is and they want it. But we're not quite at a position where you can have it in any device, in any location, as it was intended, that it's fluid, that it follows you through the day, that it's not just a special experience you're having for 2 minutes where, you know, all the artistry got together, you know, that this is just part of audio everywhere. I think that's the biggest, and, you know, there's a lot of science to break that down, but I think there's a lot of small science and a lot of small applied science that goes into actually making that happen. Yeah.
Having the 9 to 5 experience, right?
Yeah, a 9 to 5, sure. That's perfect. That's a great title.
Brian, how about?
Sure. I mean, I think for me, I'm sorry about this mic stand. I work for a mic manufacturer, so. It's a sure. Sorry. So, no, you know, I would say there are two things for me, and one thing that really stood out earlier in the conversation yesterday in the panel, which is, as a product manager, as someone who's responsible for trying to figure out how do we take these things and actually make them useful for people, or where do we find applications where spatial audio makes an improvement that provides value, and bringing those things in, I think we've achieved a lot, like enough to give me the basic tools to experiment with different types of, you know, solutions, different types of problem solving. You know, I think we have a lot of the tools in order to enable those types of things. I think as far as scientific problems, for me, there's still the dream of the always-on augmented audio device, which, you know, besides just audio signal processing, is also questions of battery, social acceptability, privacy questions. So, in fact, I think many of the problems that we face, you know, as an industry moving forward with finding applications for spatial audio aren't necessarily scientific. There will be, you know, barriers, I think, that we face in the future. But I think a lot of it right now is how do we prioritize which of those things will be impactful on the experience in the future? And then how do we take what we have now, which is already, you know, this phrase keeps coming back to my head throughout this conference, which is like perfect is the enemy of good, where we have a set of tools right now that allow us to experiment and have high impact with spatial audio or immersive content that allow us to get into everyday life or get into people's worlds, so that more and more this type of augmentation or, you know, whatever becomes socially acceptable. But if I had to pick a scientific thing, I think it's really, you know, the source separation problem, right? You know, really saying that's a solved problem on a small mobile device in real time, the ability to selectively filter sounds in addition to augmentation, I think will be a crucial, you know, for me, that's something that doesn't seem possible really at all in a kind of meaningful way today, you know, in a kind of end user platform. And that's something that I think would be a big advancement for the field.
Yeah, so Brian, I think what you both and Joy are saying is that we have the tools, right? We have the tools, but integrating these technologies into our daily life in a very natural way. And this is like the best kind of technology is the one that you don't even know that's there. It just becomes part of your life, just like our phones have become. I mean, who lives without a smartphone now? It's very rare. So to find that mechanism to have that 9-to-5 experience and of integration.
Yeah, also the issue of social presence. Still, I mean, we feel still disconnected with those that are not physically located with us. So feeling together while we are physically apart. So one of the issue is audio, of course, but there are so many elements that, as Scott was saying, we are making, or Meta is making lots of progress in that direction, but still it's not the same to experience a conference online or remotely, or these hybrid conferences. They are still not successful. So when will we reach a point where physically traveling to a conference is the same as experiencing it from home, and you feel really the same connections?
Right, we were having this discussion over last night with the idea of having the Jedi Council and having this integration of real and virtual participants that are so seamless that it just seems very, very natural. I would like to ask this question to Brad for augmented reality. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you think are the most pressing, from your perspective, the most pressing scientific questions.
Thanks, yeah. Well, there's one that is, I think, about our human resources, and then one is the technological. The human resources part being us, we have bias, we have preconceptions, and anyone who knows me knows I like to challenge assumptions. And for instance, some of the description of what immersive audio is, being transcending time, space, and being immersed in an experience. If you think about a mono radio back in decades ago when the World Worlds was playing, people were so immersed in it, they thought aliens were invading and killed themselves. Like you can get immersion through attention with compelling content with anything. But if we're talking about being surrounded, I think our problem is, what we've solved is the point source, but what we haven't is that full true immersion. So one drop of water in a distance would be a spatial representation of that sound. And if it's happening everywhere as rain, now you're immersed and you're in it. And thunder is an extremely immersive sonic experience that my rock stars, Brett and Shirley, are in the audience there. And they often talk about, Brett will draw in MS Paint like a river. How do you sonify all the parts of that river? We're really good at doing a point source and spatializing it, but we're not really good at, we haven't cracked it. And I think someone spoke of volumetric audio, maybe Anastasia, but I missed everything up until now. So apologize if I'm reiterating, but yeah, we're gonna have to challenge our assumptions, listen to people. And again, I believe it comes back to perception, because that's all we really have. From there, you think you're seeing a movie, you think you're in it, you think there's no fourth wall, but truly you are looking at pixels, you're listening to drivers. So, and I think what we've done really well too is with only two, we've created an immersive, where you're immersed and surrounded by audio. The next part is getting the rooms right. As you know, someone talking to point source is great, but you have to have that really good reverb fingerprinting and collision synthesis and all the things that go on and that construct all the rest of that ambience. So when you have a crack of lightning, that's only part of it, but there's reflections off trees and buildings, and then as it dissipates, it descends in frequency and rolls out, and it's just, there's a lot to do before we can get the realism of what's happening in nature, so you feel someone's in the room truly co-present. So there's the technological one, but then there's also our perception. We have to really step back and remove our perception and bias and how we're coloring it to see what's really there and then solve for it.
Right, and some of the things that we talked about yesterday at the number of presentations, there's the science, there's the perception, there's also a form factor. And Brad, I have to ask you, are you wearing the next version of Magic Leap?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of somewhat public now. I've got a couple of them. We all kind of do, but
I meant your cool sunglasses, but I think that's also
this is the new one.
Yeah, that's something to also consider is if we want to have this continual 9-to-5 experience, the form factor also really matters, and for different applications in different ways. So I think that maybe now is a good time for us to switch over talking about the application part of it. And I know each one of you here on the panel is working in a slightly different area, and your applications that you're thinking about is also different. So I wanted to just ask this general question: what do you think, from your perspective, is the application that can most benefit from this technology, from immersion, from creating a sense of this engagement in an experience? Or maybe you can talk about some of the things that you're working on in terms of the specific applications. Patrick?
Yeah. So I think the main point would be video games. It's a billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. You're in an extended reality, you play Minecraft, or you play Valorant or Call of Duty. You're transforming yourself and transporting yourself into being that player. And understanding, again, like you were saying about the psychology, we're really good at, doing 22.2 or, 6th order ambisonics or, whatever the case is. We can create the math to do that. But the problem is, like, I think our evolution of us as a species is still learning about how to better connect with that simulation. Like the point about mono and hearing the War of the Worlds, like that generation didn't know what 22.2 was. And my child, who's 9, knows what a smartphone is and knows what VR and AR are and what they can do for him. And he's probably going to have an easier time being immersed than me because he'll just ignore the problems where we have grown up with the problems. So I think that we need to better understand the psychology of what is going on in the big picture, the sum of all the parts, the keyboard, the mouse, the interfaces that we use to connect with this simulation, and what we like about it. So there's a lot of psychology we need to understand.
I just want to respond. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying people have only ever known immersive audio. Nature's immersive. When somebody's in the room, that's what we're trying to recreate. So to say somebody decades ago didn't know what immersive is, that's all they knew. They didn't actually know the proxies.
Well,
we're just trying to recreate what people already perceive.
Yeah, but we're trying to recreate it artificially. So the point that there's a disconnect between what we naturally know as three-dimensional and what we're trying to simulate are not the same. So evolutionary-wise, our younger generations will be more forgiving of technological flaws as they progress.
Yeah, I mean, immersive, when you go back to the cavemen that went into caves, and they mostly lived in an anechoic environment in the free field, and the only place that they experienced something that was so magical is going to these caves. And how immersive was that experience? I mean, incredibly immersive. So we have, I think through our evolution, we've always experienced in some form immersive sound, but as Patrick said, we are recreating it artificially. So I wonder if, Scott, you could talk a little bit about the application that you think can most benefit in a greater sense of immersion.
Yeah, I mean, what I come back to, which we haven't really talked about yet today, is the opportunities to give people experiences that they wouldn't otherwise be able to have. So this opens up really interesting conversations around accessibility and equity. And I remember, like, as one personal example, my kids, early in the pandemic, what did they want to do? Is they wanted to, go watch 360-degree VR videos of places that they couldn't go to. So Disneyland rides and you know, the beaches of Hawaii and things like that. And that's great. That's a stepping stone. But I'm also thinking on the other end, you know, what is the opportunity for audio to unlock experiences for people who are vision impaired? For, you know, for our devices to take our audio world, understand it, and translate it for people who are, you know, are blind or hearing or you know, hearing impaired. Sorry, deaf or hearing impaired. Hard of hearing. And so I think there's enormous opportunities for these experiences to really level the playing field in a way that we haven't had to date, and to be able to give people access to experiences, to abilities that they wouldn't otherwise be able to have. And that's something that I'm really excited about, the work that we get to do. You know, whether it is sort of annotating the world and figuring out, well, you know, how do we can do much better than the rolling captions of, you know, of Netflix. We can, you know, we can help people understand who is saying that, where was that doorbell coming from, you know, and give me health and safety warnings. And then on the other side, to be able to, you know, use audio to help navigate someone, you know, through a place that they've never been to. There have been several, you know, lab-developed experiences that I've seen that, you know, you are able to walk into a building you've never been to before, and you know, you're a person who's vision impaired, and you're able to successfully navigate to a room, to your meeting. So like, that's the kinds of things that I think are really exciting. It's sort of a second-order experience versus what we're talking about here in terms of, you know, how do we solve issues of spatial audio or headphone equalization or mic self-noise or things like that. But I think those are the experiences that I'm really excited for us to work on unlocking. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think as Veronique also was mentioning in her keynote, there are, you know, so many applications. Health,
yeah,
right? Health and physical therapy, rehabilitation, pain management, and all these applications. A lot of people are working on it. It's still very much in an in-lab kind of situation. So I wonder if you have any thoughts about what can we do to get it out of the lab, or what are the obstacles of getting it out of the lab and into people's homes and for uses in home.
Does anyone else want to?
I can jump in. Mm-hmm. Personally, we have a great experience with the Quest 2, I have to say, because it's a device that can be very easily taken home, and we gave it to children 10 years old, and they played for 2 months, and they reported us the experience. So it's getting there. I mean, it's so the devices, of course, they need to be easy to install. So both the software and also the hardware needs to be ergonomic, and it needs to be also affordable, of course. With other devices, we didn't have the same, I don't want to say which one, but we didn't have the same success because there were some either hardware limitations or some issues in installing the software or using it. And so, I mean, of course, we need the developers that are ready to make experiences which make sense in the home for training. And of course, for smaller, like academic labs like ours, there is always the, not the issue, but there is, of course, there are the big game companies that can produce much better experiences. So if we want to use it for example, for training children, then the child would be much more interested in established game, let's say. So there is also the fact of how to create experiences which are interesting enough that one wants to keep using at home. So there is also that issue. But I think we are really getting there. So there are lots of both labs and also companies that they give the technology at home and they use it for impactful, like for education, for, like you said, rehabilitation, for training.
Yeah, I mean, then we have a number of projects working on health and rehabilitation
yes.
in virtual reality, and it's very successful, especially for people who sometimes cannot physically move to to another location. Brian, how about you? What application?
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of the applications people brought up are the ones that make a lot of sense. For me, I mean, I think the primary criteria is there a spatial component to this that by using spatial audio, by using VR, XR, AR, we're able to provide or surface a context that we have to, you know, use a projection or a kind of alternate for otherwise, right? So like, a great example of that would be, situations in which, say, you're making a mix. The Spatial Connect example that Véronique brought up, which, you want to be in context. You don't want to be out of context, right? Your tools want to be there in that environment in 3D if you're working with 3D objects. So I think there's still a huge amount of space to explore in these kind of hybrid, devices that are augmenting your kind of professional world or your whatever kind of natural world by providing you visualizations and context that would not be possible in 2D. So I think that's super interesting. And, on that front, Dear Reality, this is actually, we're going to announce it for the first time here, but we're making a interactive version of Spatial Connect that runs in Unity and Wise, for example, to start, which will allow you, say, to make final mix adjustments, change attenuation curves, look at the profile, are all in headset. And I think this is kind of a theme also from Sennheiser, which is, we want to make sure that the tools are available and, encourage interoperability as much as we can so that the tools are available for, the labs and for creatives to push the boundaries even further, right? So this is one aspect. The other aspect is not related to VR that we've been working on a lot, but instead on how do we make and get spatial audio into more people's homes. So this is something that we've worked on with Netflix for the past few years and creating an ADM renderer that, this is kind of the standard delivery format for broadcast and the audio definition model for people who are taking Atmos deliveries. And then using that to generate a kind of 2-channel presentation that works across loudspeakers, headphones, as a better stereo replacement. So in this way, this is the good, not the perfect, right? This is how do we take something and bring a better experience to more people, right? That may not be the full level of immersion, but still allows more and more people to have that experience. And that's been a huge success for us. 1 billion hours of AMBEO 2-channel spatial audio have been viewed on Stranger Things Season 4 alone. That's just one show. So I think this ability to take, content, make it more accessible, bring it to more people, also, just like what Apple did with Apple Music and Dolby Atmos, that will drive more advanced uses, more people into feeling comfortable with XR or VR because they've already experienced some other level of immersion. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's one question that this comes to mind is as more people will be using these technologies, I asked the question to especially people in the industry, are companies thinking about the fact that people will adopt this technology, but people will also adapt to the technology, and Patrick, this is something that you were saying, like your 9-year-old kid is so, kids 2 years old, 1-year-old are so just using technology, and it's becoming part of their lives. So I wonder if, the design of the technologies and the design of the experiences, is this something that you're thinking about when you're developing these hopefully longer-term implementations of the technology?
Is that me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Certainly, being a consumer electronics company, I think we think about the customer all day, every day. I think we, think about use cases, and you always try to design towards the broadest space. Even if it's a professional application, somebody shouldn't have to read a manual or, take 3 classes to learn how to use your product. So, if it's for a child or not, we certainly go for the most simple application for broad adoption. I think, the topic of which applications are, really interesting, to our type of industry. I think, metaverse and gaming is really interesting because it allows us to create a simulation framework where we understand everything. Basically, it's like everything is instrumented, everything is measurable, and so we can do immersive audio research within that environment. Or if you have a video game, which is more common than a proper metaverse. We can go through and we can simulate things, and we can get feedback from people, and we can get people excited about the products. I think on broad mass adoption, I think there's some issues for applications, which is we almost need for XR in the real world, we need to have sort of negative immersive audio, if you will. So we need to have selective cancellation, and so we've been sort of crutched, with everything's a headphone, and so we think that that's great. So we'll put a headphone on and we'll flip on the ANC, and all is right with the world. But I think, I think the next phase for the industry and for researchers, I guess I would challenge all of you, is sort of a negative immersive audio and how we might apply that in a headphone if we want to cancel things coming in spatially, but then also sort of transaurally or with speakers in the environment, whether that's automotive. Of course, Harman is huge in automotive, and we have a lot of AR screens in the automotive, and they're starting to ship now. And of course, that'll become broader and broader adoption of that. And how does audio fit within that type of context? So,
thank you. Does anybody else want to chime in?
Well, just to say, I think that point you're bringing up about how we're making tools and experiences and platforms that then the next generation or the current artists will then push and break and use in new ways. And I think also for us, I think that should, I want to raise the question too. I think there's a lot of assumptions that I've heard throughout the conference, and this is something also throughout VR for the past 7 years, which is, the ultimate goal that we're striving towards is the ability to create something that's indistinguishable from reality. But I think it's completely possible that, as more and more people use these experiences as they exist today, just like with television or radio, where we have these moments of hyper-reality, that actually this goal of perfectly, being able to recreate reality or have experiences indistinguishable from reality may not actually be the goal that, in the end, consumers want to have as an experience, or they may have a range of experiences from cartoonish to whatever that become their understanding of this virtual world that feels more natural to them. So just to even take a step back to say the perfect immersion of being able to trick someone that they're somewhere completely different or they're hearing sounds that don't exist, maybe is not the complete end goal as we start to get more mass adoption and more people playing with these technologies.
I think that naturally humans have always been bored by reality. This is where we have stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is part of who we are, storytelling and being transported in our minds into worlds that don't exist. And here we have the possibility of now having a manifestation that feels real. Does anybody else want to chime into the adaptability? Yes, Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. And I think with co-presence, we're still striving for that realism to feel connected to loved ones or friends. But I totally agree with new experiences. And I think Scott was mentioning it before too. Things that are sound first, that are not just value add to visuals, but are led by sound. Especially with these devices, there's more things out of your field of view with the optics than there is in. So we're representing more of the world than the optics are. And then I think when you think of the suitcase, cell phone, people tolerated that form factor because they had undeniable value right away. They could, get on the phone and talk to whoever they needed to. And it was better than a pager and finding a payphone. And that's what we're doing now, is we're kind of tolerating this form factor. So going from the lab is really, like you said earlier, getting it to a form factor that's got the holy grail of long battery life. It's going to have privacy audio, high frequency response, real world pass-through, sonic occlusion, sonic collisions. But also, when we go into the occlusion, the thing that becomes the danger, I think the big thing to solve for is, how do you know when you need to add something back in a factory environment or navigating on the road with a bicycle? If we just block everything out, then how do we know when an approaching car needs to come back in? You could say, okay, we'll look at Doppler, we'll look at things, but I guess that's going to take some AI. So we got to do some machine learning, and I think before we light up that sonic dimming, so to speak, we're going to need to figure out how and when to bring in the real world back in when it's dangerous, because we're talking about products that are evolving to a mobility that are going to be worn, and you're going to be moving around. We're not like gaming, consoles. It's still fairly stationary. There are some mobile games, but it's not going to be like the adoption of AR and VR. So especially AR, it's going to be highly mobile. So we're going to have to solve for a lot more use cases in short order. It's not going to be, where you can optimize your environment for your use case. You're going to be transporting through a multitude of use cases. So I think having a very adaptive framework, and this is something I was talking with Scott years ago, that Brett and Shirley are actually building, is an adaptive, dynamic, contextual audio framework that does deliver contextually in kind to the environment. So I think there's a lot of small things that are going to become big issues.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Brandon. I think it's so important for us to be thinking far ahead and what our vision is. So before we turn to the audience for some questions, I want to ask about vision, right? And I'm reminded of this story I heard a while ago where when Alexander Graham Bell was going around, he was in Boston demonstrating his telephone, his photo phone, I think he called it, and the mayor of Boston said, "I have a vision. I imagine that one of these telephones will exist in every city," right? So I wonder if you could talk about, maybe a few of you, about what is your vision, let's say when we're thinking 10 years down the line? What is that vision of immersive sound within the context of augmented virtual reality, XR?
Sure.
Patrick.
Yeah, I was going to say, where the simulation that you're running is able to understand who you are and what you feel and what's going on with you in that simulation. And there's kind of like, I don't want the game to know exactly what I'm going through, but it could make the simulation or the game more compelling. It could make it more realistic. It's like the uncanny valley of I can't remember the movie. I don't remember the name of the movie. But you're there, like everything about you, your brain is connected to the game, and the game has some AI to understand what's going on with you, and it can adapt and make the game harder or easier based on what you're doing. And technology-wise, we need to build a pipeline that connects the human to the simulation.
So an integration of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I think as with games, you'll probably not agree. I feel like the more successful that we are, the less people will notice the audio. It will just blend in and be a component of their lives. I'll be able to, summon a conversation with my parents at any time and not need to go to a big touch screen or fire up Zoom on my computer or on my phone. It will just, happen instantaneously. I'll have this seamless integration between asynchronous and synchronous communication. I'll be able to, diagnose that weird sound that my car is making, immediately with no help from a mechanic. Like all these kinds of experiences, I think we'll just start to take them for granted. So I think, unfortunately, coming from games, audio is successful until it's noticed, and that's the point where people are like, nope, that didn't sound right. But if it sounds right, they're like, yeah, of course, that's the way it should have been. And it doesn't matter how amazing the simulation was that created that car engine or that non-repetitive weapon sound. So I think that's the future of augmented reality for audio. Is we are something that helps people be successful, but it's not something that they're actively thinking about. Wow, that spatial audio is incredible. It's just, that sounds like where I expected it to come from.
Thank you. Anybody else want to jump in with a last thought?
It reminds me of the color TV. Remember when it was like motels would advertise color TV? It's like,
some still
of course
do.
They're all color. Yeah. So I agree with Scott that it'll get to the point where, of course, it's immersive, and of course it's great. But what do you want to do with it? So it goes back to those experiences. What are we trying to build? What's compelling content? What are we trying to do? So yeah, it goes back to we've got the perception, right? And in 5 years, 10 years, sorry, whatever time frame you said, I don't believe it's about the killer app. It's just about the adoption is the tipping point when it's ubiquitous and the form factor's right and all that starts to happen. And we're going to see it used in ways we can't imagine now, obviously. But I believe that games was the genesis for a lot of things, a lot of, from EDM to a lot of the VR stuff. It has a very big game slant, but I think it'll start to take on a different life. And there's going to be new challenges to solve for there.
Thank you. Brian, last thought before we go to
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of build on these ideas of augmented audio as being a helper, as an enabler, a superpower, perhaps, you know, I think we start to see the beginnings of that with like the AirPods Pro, right? You know, this, I have transparency on, I'm listening to Dolby Atmos music, so I have, you know, spatial diversity within the mix. So like, it's not just a wall of sound. And interleaved in that now, still, I'm starting to get notifications or announcements or whatever. So I think we can see the kind of nascent or emergent form of these augmented audio devices coming out of the headphone market from Apple, right? And, you know, the research coming out of Meta Reality Labs, which I definitely recommend checking out, like their stuff around, you know, improving hearing aid or, you know, hearing quality and reading, in, you know, in loud environments, where it's very easy to extrapolate what you could do with that technology beyond the one example that Meta puts in the blog. So I think, just to agree, I think this is the path that we're on. And I think slowly, you know, in 5 years, all content will be probably mixed in some immersive format, even for delivery to linear television, for the most part. Not everyone may have stereo or immersive speakers, but more and more content will be produced that way, and more people will have augmented experiences, even if that is not the primary reason why they're having that experience. But it will become, you know, the IKEA app is a great example, right? I mean, a lot of people are using the IKEA app to look at how furniture is in their space. You know, these kinds of natural value add uses will grow, and I think will become, you know, more pervasive throughout society.
And we'll go in the direction of the augmented human. Right. Great, thank you. I hope we have time for a couple of questions. So you were first.
Yeah. Augmented audio or immersive audio for entertainment is of course nice, but what about immersive audio for the workplace? For instance, what we are researching now is something about open offices, large offices. How do you create zones so you even may have immersive silence, for instance, in certain areas when that is needed? If you look beyond the technologies we discuss here, I think we can go into some creation of sound fields without using any kind of headsets and stuff like that, and creating immersive sound fields in one way or another. Do you have any comments on that?
There is quite a lot of research on sound zone. I think there is also a panel this afternoon, actually.
Yeah, Edgar Tueri has a panel on it.
Yeah, so it is definitely getting there as well, and the technological issues, mostly signal processing, are solved. So it's definitely a very interesting application, especially for the diffusion of open offices. Yeah, and in the cars also, there has been lots of work on like sound zones in a car.
So yeah, I invite you to come to a personalized sound zones workshop later today. Anybody else want to add to that?
I mean, obviously, there's also the virtual workplace, and just your workplace is wherever you happen to be, as long as you have, you know, Wi-Fi in your Quest. Horizon Workrooms today gives you some of that experience, and we continue to sort of explore what are the best ways for people to be able to share information and to be able to communicate. And we, you know, from an acoustic perspective, we're always, you know, trying to refine what's the best way to embody people's voices, and so thinking about, you know, speech emission patterns and rooms. We have you know, a bunch of different explorations as to, well, what should this future virtual office sound and look like? So there's definitely lots to try and figure out the ways for people to be able to connect, both in sort of the high touch meetings, but also in sort of co-inhabited spaces where we just do all of our work, and we're able to, you know, sort of have those water cooler conversations or lean over our shoulder and talk to somebody with low friction, even though we're thousands of miles apart. So that's the kinds of things we're thinking about.
Thank you. Next question.
Yeah. So one thing I would say is a quote from Dorothy Parker: "Things come apart so easily when they're held together by lies." And we have as a field to adopt what the graphics folks did. Basically, they went for rendering, the physics-based rendering, and they sort of used open source, they built software, they sort of bit the bullet and went whole hog for it. Unless we do the same, before we get audio right, we'll have brain implants which sort of take care of it, and we'll never get audio right, if you will. Anyway, that's my sort of soapbox position, if you will.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody want to respond to that?
I mean, I think he's absolutely right. So I think, when it comes to immersive audio, it's, it's a perceptual model, that the brain is putting a lot of different pieces together, and we can certainly fool ourselves that it's, performing pretty well. But, when you start doing negative audio, for example, or cancellations dynamically in space, for example, that's not a interpretive model. The sound isn't there, so it has to, it's more binary. And so, metaverse modeling, whatever we want to call it, digital twinning, how we get that sort of scaled up to really understand what we actually have acoustically is the way. So,
thank you. I know we're running out of time, so Leslie, maybe last question.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. I will make this quick. Market research helps inform my research, which is immersive and inclusive. And immersive and inclusive has to deal with how women and underrepresented groups consume and have access to immersive audio. The reason I'm interested in market research is because there are job opportunities that come with this, burgeoning field of immersive audio, and I would very much like to see more women and underrepresented groups participate in this space because it does show growth. So my questions, I said I'd keep it short, and it's impossible, but where do you go for your market research? Because my research, I don't know, I've got this compound annual growth for 3D audio in 2017 was forecast to be 3.45 billion, and then the most recent statistics I saw was 5.69 billion. So if you could just speak to what you think that is, because it will help the research. And then I'm just going to throw out a couple of terms for anybody who's interested. Afrotectopia.org, wonderful site for learning how people of color consume in the XR space and what they want to see in that space. Would be great to have a virtual reality experience that removes microaggressions that are experienced daily, but we talked about eliminating pain. That would be a nice thing to eliminate. Just trying to spitball here. And then trying to de-gender spaces. So there's, of course, the talk about recording studios being gendered, and so if we're making virtual recording studios, are we keeping in mind that is perceived to be a gendered space? Anyway, I'll keep it short. So market research, if you have it. I'm sorry, maybe I just can't. Market research, if you have it, and just those things.
So maybe to the industry.
Yeah, I'll throw out for what we see in gaming, in normal traditional video games, we see about a split between 50-50. And then within that, we see an over-index on people that report neurodiversity. So we actually see a large number of people interested in video games and consuming video games that identify ADD, ADHD, etc. So.
To go to the market data question, the market data is a mess, like especially the publicly available stuff. So, I mean, especially if you're looking specifically at audio, as Sennheiser, we have some information, right, especially about the kinds of money that we make in terms of spatial audio. And looking at a number of the publicly available reports, there are some that are good, but, a lot of it is overestimation, especially of the audio market. Not to say there's not huge growth in the number of people who are producing content, with game audio engine skills or audio engineering skills for these kinds of platforms, but be wary of many of the publicly available data sets, at least in my experience. You could ask Meta, they probably know
Scott, you're on the spot.
They are the market in some ways. So.
I am focused on research, so I do not have access to market data.
But great questions to ask, and I encourage you to continue the conversation over our break before our next session. And I'd like to thank you, all the panelists, and Brad for joining us remotely in this excellent discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Yeah. Thank you, Agnieszka, and the panel. We're going to take a break. If you want to stretch your legs, grab some coffee. We'll start back at 11:30 with our dual track. So we'll have workshops in this room. In fact, our very own Scott Selfen will be